Something has been really bothering me about the harbingers with regards to their numbers. For a long time, I had assumed that because Pierro was the first of the Fatui, he would be ranked the first harbinger. Even if they are ranked by strength, he'd need to be powerful or persuasive enough to convince the other harbingers to join him, and also to report to him, so logically that made sense. But now I'm not so sure. Evidence that Pierro might not even be counted among the 11 is starting to pile up, and if it ends up being true, then that means that there are technically 12 harbingers, the 11 plus Pierro. This is including the 2 dead and deleted ones, of course. But if this is true, that the harbingers are actually 11 plus 1 and not just 11, then there's still one harbinger that we haven't met yet, a missing mystery harbinger. I don't actually know how likely it is that Pierro isn't counted among the 11 and that there may be a missing harbinger, but I would like to explore the possibility nonetheless. So, in this video, I'll start things off by making a case for Pierro being unranked, or at least not counted as one of the 11, and then we're going to revisit the harbinger rankings and constellations to find some more evidence, and then we'll explore the possible identity of this mystery missing harbinger, if they exist at all, and we will finally end this video by listing all of the reasons that I am probably wrong. Word of warning though, if you don't like extremely speculative theories or big stretches, then you should probably just click off this video now. Just save yourself and me the trouble. I'm doing this for fun and not because I think the theory is particularly probable, I just really like the thought experiment. Okay, we clear on that? Great. If you guys are ready, then let's start things off by having a chat about the big Fatui daddy himself, ye old Pierro. The idea that Pierro is a harbinger comes from the idea that he started the Fatui as an organization, as stated in the Pale Flame set. And it also came from Child, who literally called him the first ever Fatui harbinger in a voice line. So that's it, right? Like, done deal. He's the first harbinger and he's probably ranked number 1 since he's the leader, yeah? No, not right. Child is a misleading little gopher man. Actually, I think the issue is more of a localization thing. See, the Chinese text is a lot more vague about these statements and seems to use the whole first mention as more of a point of origin or a founder meaning rather than as a rank. I won't try to explain the nuances here, I will leave that to those who are fluent, but I can support this idea with some adjacent evidence. Whenever a harbinger's rank is referred to in Chinese, it is always called a seat. For example, Child says that Damslet has the 3rd seat in his voice line. Scaramouche then claims that Pantalone has the 9th seat, and Marionette has 1 seat lower than himself, and Child has the last seat. This manifested in the English translation a little weirdly. Child ends up using literal numbers to refer to the seats in a pretty consistent way, while Scaramouche always hyphenates an associated position with the word ranked. Chinese text is so much simpler, it literally just says seat. But this use of seat, or one of these ranked treatments, has never been used in regards to Pierro, which is part of why I said earlier that the whole first of the Fatui thing is more about the origin of the Fatui rather than his ranking. But this only proves that Pierro doesn't have a confirmed rank, right? Well, if you go to the Winter Nights Lazo trailer in the Genshin Impact official YouTube channel and check the description box, you might notice something a little bit weird. Every harbinger is listed in the exact same format. First, their Comedia name, then their position within the Fatui, followed by their code name. Notice how every single one of them, except for Pierro, has Fatui Harbinger listed in their position. The fact that Pierro's is different has to be a deliberate choice. So, if official Genshin social media wants to label him as the director of the Fatui and not as a harbinger, I think I'll do the same. Or at least I'll call him number 0 of the Fatui harbingers. That'll make me feel better. But that does leave us with a bit of a quandary. If he's not a harbinger, then his constellation is not on the official Fatui constellation wheel. That means there is one extra constellation that belongs to a character that we haven't met yet. So let's take a fresh look at these rankings to narrow down some possibilities here. Unlike my previous attempts at this whole ranking and constellation thing, I'm going to be taking the most boring and logical approach possible because it seems to be what Hoyoverse wants to do. So we'll start by assuming that Pierro isn't a ranked harbinger or is number 0, and therefore his constellation is not on the wheel. But given the similarities between the Mocking Mask of the Pale Flame set, which is the one that talks about him, and the mask at the top of the wheel, let's just say that the mask at the top of the wheel is him. a director overseeing his theater troupe. As for the confirmed rankings, our current setup looks something like this, with unconfirmed placements for Arlecchino and Capitano and one supposedly unknown Harbinger, which we will talk about later. As for the two named Harbingers, well, with the release of Playable Scaramouche, we finally had a new set of voice lines about the Fatui to work with. And no small amount of people were very quick to point out, when comparing Child and Scaramouche's voice lines about the Harbingers against each other, the order in which the Harbingers are listed is identical. Well, nearly. You can see that for yourself. But notice that it's only the Harbingers that are deceased or deleted who have inconsistent positions. This just makes sense. They're not really alive anymore, so they can be taken out of the whole system, right? The rest of these, though, appear to be in the correct order of the currently known ranks. And if we offset these known ranks to get a point of reference, we can basically fill in the blanks on our missing numbers. That makes Capitano rank 1 and Arlecchino rank 4, leaving us with our missing Harbinger at rank 10. A full disclosure though, rank 10 could actually be Pierro if he is still a Harbinger. I mean, there's no reason why he has to be the strongest to also be their leader. It kind of just seems silly, but I'm throwing the idea out there because it's not completely impossible, so just keep that in mind as we go forward. With the rankings out of the way, though, we can now take another look at the constellation wheel to see if we can't narrow down which constellation might belong to the unknown Harbinger. Starting at the top left and moving counterclockwise, we have a Plague Doctor's mask, a Globus Cruciger, a Crying Theater mask, a Healing Hand, a Marionette, a Narwhal, a Moth, a Kokeshi doll, a Hand of Glory, a Crying Dove, and 3 crossed nails. Some of these are incredibly obvious, if not already confirmed. Obviously, the Plague Doctor's mask belongs to Dottore, now that he's an unethical doctor that uses his constellation as a pauldron for some reason. Columbina is definitely the Crying Dove because Columba literally means dove and it is heart-shaped, and Columbina's commedia trope was all about love. Plus her hair is full of feathers. Cendrone is definitely the Marionette because her codename is literally Marionette. If it's any more obvious than that, I don't know what to do. Scaramouche and Tartaglia have official constellations since they are playable, so that's the Kokeshi doll and the Narwhal respectively accounted for, which leaves Signora with the Moth, which is something based entirely on her Crimson Witch boss form drops and her Hellfire butterflies in the Lazo trailer. So that's 6 down and 5 to go. Now we talk keywords, tropes, and some speculated assignments. So this one here is the Crying Theater mask, pictured without its counterpart, the Laughing mask. It's supposed to reference duality, or as I will dub it, being two-faced. You know who's described as being two-faced? Arlecchino. Plus, Commedia Arlecchino is closely tied to Columbina, and notice how both these constellations have tears on them? Weak ties? Maybe, but these theater masks were supposed to represent Greek muses, and in Greek theater, only men were allowed to be actors, so masks let them play women's parts. Arlecchino is pretty gender neutral in design and iconography so far, so I still think this suits her pretty well. Now, this hand symbol is known as the Healing Hand. I've only ever associated it with the Native American Hopi tribe, but most people believe this could be a stylized Hamsa hand as well. In both cases, it can mean protection, but the name Hamsa does mean 5. Puccinella is ranked 5 and has Godfather vibes in the way he's protecting Tartaglia's family, so I guess we can give him this constellation? Now, the Globus Cruciger is a symbol of Christian authority, especially in regards to royalty. And because of that, it was frequently found on coins. Its shape was also used for the alchemical symbol antimony, which was known for being able to be converted into gold. Now, who's obsessed with gold and Mora? No, not Dory. It's Pantalone. He's a banker. He's literally called the rich man in Chinese. So maybe we'll just assign him this constellation, especially since he is wearing a ring with the symbol on it. Listen, I told you, Hoyo is being so boring about this. Moving right along, the 3 crossed nails are usually used to represent Jesus' crucifixion, while the Coventry of crossed nails does also mean hope and reconciliation. Combined, the meaning could mean self-sacrifice or martyr. I'm assigning this constellation to Capitano, who appears to have this kind of history, especially if he does end up being someone like the blood-stained knight. We are not, however, going to talk about what his actual identity is. I am just basing this on speculation. Basically, all of his options right now that we know of in the game kind of line up with this constellation anyway, so it's fitting no matter who you pick. So that leaves us with the clawed hand. And this, in my opinion, is most likely a hand of glory. A severed hand that's been turned into a candle. It was a punishment handed out to traitors and thieves, so let's mark this one down as traitor. And we're also going to mark it down as our missing harbinger. Before we start on this, full disclosure, the idea for this harbinger's potential identity came from a Discord buddy of mine, Lorcenic. They declared this their crack theory, and I laughed at it along with them, until I realized that they kinda had a really good point. See, if there really is an unknown 10th Harbinger, there were only so many Commedia characters that they could possibly be based on. And there would have to have been an excellent reason for their lack of presence everywhere in the game so far, and why no character was commenting on this absence and the lack of a 10th Harbinger in the same way that they did with Signora and Scaramouche's empty seats. But if their constellation really is the Hand of Glory, which is a symbol of a traitor or a criminal, maybe no one talks about them because they were always meant to be a double agent, a spy, and at some point they may have betrayed the Fatui, and then they were disposed of. Being a traitor would explain their absence, but it doesn't really give us much to work with in terms of their identity. Luckily, Lorcenic already had a Commedia character selected, and after doing my own research into potential Commedia archetypes, I definitely think they're right. The archetype in question is Brigella. Now, Brigella is a particularly well-developed archetype, and in hindsight, it's an odd character to ignore, in part because of his notoriety. He's a masterful liar with a clever tongue, usually dressed in a white coat, and he usually has facial hair. But what stood out to me the most about him was the fact that he was most frequently cast as the owner of a tavern. A tavern much like the one I'm sitting in right now. You know, Angel Share, the one run by Diluc. But don't get it twisted. Diluc is not a harbinger. He hates the Fatui, goes out of his way to destroy their strongholds and mess up their plans. He spent 3 years on it, going undercover, doing that. He got banned from the country. He literally was chased out and nearly died. And plus, the constellations don't match. Diluc has an owl, and there's no owl on the Fatui constellation wheel. But what about if it was someone close to Diluc? Someone who we haven't seen a constellation for? Someone who also owned a tavern? Maybe this tavern. In other words, Diluc's father, Crepus. Owner of a tavern? Check. Facial hair? Check. White coat? Well, it's a vest, but check. And the best part about this is that Crepus actually did have a delusion. A really weird delusion too, as it has a unique casing compared to the other delusions like Tartalia's, and it doesn't appear to leverage elemental energy at all. Instead, it uses sigils to summon black fire and chains. So fun fact about the Hand of Glory. It's actually a magic candlestick. The hand was supposed to hold a candle made from the fat of a criminal, and the combination of this candle and the mummified hand would magically paralyze anyone who came near it. So a candle for fire associations and chains for paralyzing enemies. Oh, and did I mention that the Hand of Glory was generally the left hand of the criminal it was severed from? Well, guess which hand the delusion is worn on? The left one. I don't think Crepus's death was an accident at all. Given their active operations in Mondstadt, it would only have been a matter of time before Crepus had to face the music, and that day just happened to fall on Diluc's 18th birthday, while they were traveling by wagon. Of all things they could run into, a 1,000-year-old drake that fought the founder of the Knights of Favonius 1,000 years ago seems like a pretty unlikely one, except that that's exactly what happened. But this only happened because of the meddling of Dottore and his pesky little mechanical birds. Those birds did something to put Ursa into a berserk mode and could very well have been responsible for the delusion backfiring on Crepus. And that might also be why his body turned to dust after the battle and didn't just, stay intact like everyone else's. This setup reeks of assassination to me. In other words, I think that the Fatui knew that Crepus had turned traitor and decided to eliminate him before he could become a problem. With Crepus gone, Diluc would have been left with a million questions and full access to everything his father owned. It would have been pretty easy to learn more about the origins of the delusion or his father's identity or role at that point. In my head, this makes a lot of sense. Diluc tries to come to terms with his father's death, and then uncovers the fact that the Fatui were responsible for it, and then he swears revenge on the Fatui, only to later find out that his father was also one of them. And to squeeze some lemon juice into that open flesh wound, this would have happened around the same time that Kaya decided to come clean about his potential role as a Conrian spy. Finding out that both your adopted brother and your father are not who they say they are on the same day, or at least in very close succession, has to be pretty traumatizing. So at that point, it makes a lot of sense why Diluc would sell his father's mansion, move into the winery, and make a 3-year trip to Snezhnaya in search of answers, wreaking so much havoc on Fatui strongholds that the Harbingers had to mobilize against him to force him out of their country. Ironically, at the end of all that, he wound up involved with an unknown third party from the north who brought him into their intelligence network, which he appears to still be running through Angel's Share, effectively turning him into the successor of Brighella, but without the Fatui ties. I'm gonna muddle the waters a little bit and point out that the Fatui are researching, or at least have extended data, on the unique delusion used by Crepus and Diluc. That much we know for sure, but what is unclear is where the delusion actually came from and how the Fatui got the information in the first place. The most likely answer is that the Fatui got the intel through conflict with Diluc, who may have taken it with him to Snezhnaya during his 3 years there. It does make sense to study the weaponry of your enemies, after all. But there are a couple of things that make this idea a little bit more unlikely. Diluc's family, the Ragnvinders, have a long history extending back over 2,600 years, and they played a pivotal role in the downfall of Decarabian, and this is the Ragnvinder responsible. Notice the red gem on his chest? I know it's a stretch, but it does look a lot like the delusion glove that Crepus and Diluc use. So could they be the same thing? Could this be the original delusion that the other Fatui delusions are based off of? This would suggest that the delusion would be passed down from generation to generation of Ragnvinders, eventually making its way into the hands of Diluc, a dangerous family heirloom, if you will. I mean, it could be a coincidence, but the thing is, during the We Will Be Reunited quest, we saw the upside-down statue of Seven hanging by purple chains, and that has a lot of similarities to the Ragnvinder delusion's chains. That delusion ended up in the hands of one of Dottoro's segments at the end of the manga, so while it might seem like an unlikely connection, remember that this statue went missing hundreds of years ago. On the slim chance that the delusion and the statue are connected, we have two possibilities here. One possibility is that the Ragnvinders had relations with the Abyss Order, which isn't too far-fetched since Kaya was left in their care. We don't actually know if Crepus knew anything about Kaya's origins, but it has always bothered me why Kaya's father chose the winery of all places to leave his son. If the Ragnvinders had a connection to the Abyss Order, say, while working as double agents for the Fatui, this might make more sense. The second possibility is that the power in the Ragnvinder delusion is abyssal in origin, and that the Abyss Order has access to lots of little black chain crystals like this one, which then raises the question of where the heck the Ragnvinders got it from in the first place if they had it 2,600 years ago. In all honesty, I think a lot of these ideas are a little too interesting for Hoyoverse, and they like to go the boring route, so this theory is most likely the crackiest of all crack theories, but I think it'd be kind of a wild twist if it ends up being true, and it would totally explain why no one talks about the 10th Harbinger. Providing the original theory is true, and Pierro isn't a Harbinger after all, or is a Harbinger and isn't the 10th. And that's a lot of ifs. Okay, time to prove myself wrong by looking at some alternate theories. One particularly popular one claims that the Harbinger constellation wheel illustrates the order in which we fight each Harbinger, counterclockwise starting from Tartaglia. And this seems to check out, since we have indeed already fought Tartaglia, Signora, and Scaramouche in that order. If that's the case, then the next boss fight should be with the owner of the Hand of Glory, who, according to my theory, should be Crepus and also dead. So this video could end up pretty short-lived. On the one hand, you can't really fight a dead man, so if the order of boss battle theory holds up, then we either skip the claw and go straight to fighting Columbina, which I feel is really unlikely since she's number 3 and it feels way too soon, or we find out the constellation belongs to, Arlecchino, and we duke it out with her instead. But that brings me to a second counter theory to this original theory, and I've dubbed it the foil theory. Basically, it works like this. Harbingers on the constellation wheel are set opposite the Harbinger they have beef with, I guess is one way to put it. Let's take a look at an easy example. Scaramouche's constellation runs opposite of Dottoro's constellation, and Scaramouche has sworn revenge upon Dottore. You see, they got beef. Now you see that 8-pointed star in the center? If you follow its points, you can start to draw a bunch of other opposing lines with some interesting results. According to the previous rankings chart that we made, we'd have Puccinella running counter to Capitano. Maybe a power struggle could be there. Then we have Child running counter to what I will assume is the representation of the Tsaritsa. It could be an interesting potential plot development since he has sworn absolute loyalty to her at this point in the story. But then we have Crepus against Arlecchino, which makes absolutely no sense because they have nothing in common. But it would make for a good case for the Hand of Glory to not belong to Crepus at all, but instead to belong to Arlecchino, with the Crying Mask then belonging to Pierro. In the Commedia, Pierro is known as the Crying Clown and is rivals with Arlecchino, so there could be something there, you know? And that does leave us with 4 harbingers left over: Columbina, Pantalone, Sandrone, and Signora. They could run counter to each other, or they may not have any counters at all. This is kind of supported by the idea that Signora is dead. Now, alternatively, the Fatui constellation wheel might mean nothing at all, and the assignments are random, and I've just wasted a lot of time. And that's also all my thoughts for now. But while I thank you all and all my lovely YouTube members for watching this video and supporting this channel, I'll let you in on a little side theory about the harbingers that I've been thinking about lately that really isn't enough to make its own video on. I have been thinking that in addition to strength, harbingers may also be ranked by how human they are. The 3 lowest ranked would be Child and Crepus, if true, and Pantalone, who all appear to be pretty normal humans. Signora was also a normal human, but she twisted her form, although she does appear to have been able to maintain some of her humanity to a degree. Sandrone would be next and is also a big question mark, but I'm wondering if she might be like semi-synthetic like Scaramouche, and Scaramouche always wanted a heart, just like the humans all around him, kind of making him human-ish, but also not really. Then we have Puccinella above him, and he appears to be human-like in species, but a bit more like Klee, so maybe like an elf of sorts? So not human, but human-ish. Then we have Arlecchino, who has very much non-human vibes, followed by Columbina, who has very much Seelie vibes, and then Dottore, who has totally cast aside his humanity and happily identifies as a monster. And finally, that leaves us with Capitano, who is also a big question mark, but he has no face, and I feel like he's just a disembodied spirit in a suit of armor at this point, so yeah, just food for thought, I guess. Anyway, I thought that was a fun thing to share, so thanks again for watching this video, guys. I'll catch y'all in the next one, so yeah, take care. See ya!